Hello everyone and welcome to Spring Boot Part 3 video on Intellipaat. In this video, we will be doing some more controller mapping. We're gonna add one more controller mapping and we are gonna map it with URL and some new methods. So before we learn more about it, let's discuss our today's agenda. But before that, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon. So first, we are gonna discuss a hands-on in which we are gonna basically return the JSON objects. Then we are going to study about the bill of materials. Moving ahead, we are going to learn about the dependency management. Then I'm going to show you how you can override the BOM file, basically the BOM dependency. Then we're going to learn about the Embedded Tomcat Server. And at the end, we are going to conclude our session with discussing how Spring MVC works. So, as you can see, there are a lot of things that are going underneath this and we are going to discuss about the same. And you guessed it right, it is bill of materials. Now before we are going to examine the bill of materials, let us discuss the Maven POM. Maven uses the Maven POM, which is basically an XML file containing details and configurations about the project, to import dependencies and to build a project. Now from there, we proceed to the bill of materials. So basically, in the bill of material is a term which is used in the Maven concept. The version of a project's dependencies are controlled by bill of material, a specific type of public object model, or we can say POM file, that serves as a central location to define and update those versions. Bill of material gives us the freedom to add dependencies to our modules without having to worry about which version to depend on. So let us see one example and we will find out in our pom.xml file. So as you can see, this is our pom.xml file and Maven can find the libraries required by our own dependencies and automatically adds them. The number of dependence layers from which the libraries are gathered has actually no upper bound. When two dependents make reference to a distinct version of the same artifact, a conflict results. Which one will the Maven include? The nearest definition is a correct response here. This indicates that the version used will be that is the one that is located closest to our project in the dependency tree. And this concept is called mediating dependencies. Let me show you one illustration of the same. So now let's see the dependency management. But before that, let's see this example. So as you can see in this example, the project A relies on B and the project A relies on project E. Different iterations of the item D are encountered by these dependencies of B and E respectively. The build of a project A will utilize the artifact ID 1.2. Since you can see there are two artifact IDs of D 1.4 and 1.2. The build of the project A is gonna utilize this artifact ID 1.0 since the path through E is less time consuming. Different methods can be used to decide which artifact version should be included. By specifically stating a version in our project's POM, we can ensure it at any time. For example, we should explicitly add D1.4 as a dependency in the POM XML file to ensure that it is used as a version control for the artifacts that can be done in our projects. So now, earlier we have discussed about the transitive dependencies, basically which one to choose and which artifact ID will be chosen. So, as you have got to know that the one with the shortest path is we are getting selected. Okay, we are generally taking the very short path. So for now, if I tell you about what is basically dependency management, so it is kind of a mechanism, to centralize the dependency information. Suppose we have a set of projects that inherit a common parent. So we can put all the dependency information in a shared POM file which is called the bill of materials file. So this is how we write the bill of materials file. So as you can see, we have the group ID Spring, artifact ID as POM and version and packaging. Then there is name called as POM. So this is basically our parent POM. So here are the dependencies. For example, it is written group ID test, artifact ID A and version 1.2. So these are all inheriting from our parent. Okay, similarly, there's another dependency with artifact ID B, version 1.0, and there's some scope written called compile. Similarly, there is another group ID called test, then there is an artifact ID, and then there is a version. This is basically called dependency management, by which a mechanism to centralize the dependency information. I hope so you would have got idea regarding the same. Now let's discuss about dependency overriding. So this is the way in which you can override the dependency. By specifically declaring the artifact in our project's POM with the appropriate version, we may override the artifact's version. And if two important BOM or bill of materials define the same artifact with different versions, the version that was first declared in the BOM file will prevail. I hope so you would have got idea about how we can override the BOM dependency. By following these rules, it will be very easy for you to understand how you can override it. Now let us discuss one of the most important part, which is the Embedded Tomcat Server. So what we have to do earlier if you have to install the Tomcat server? The first is you have to install Java, then you have to install a web or an application server, and then you have to deploy the application WAR file. What if we wanted to make this simpler? Why not incorporate the server into the application? Having struck by this idea, so our team of Spring came up with certain configuration which is already added to our Spring Boot, and thus Spring Boot came into the picture, where you have got the Embedded Tomcat Server. The concept behind the embedded servers was born from this. The server, for instance Tomcat, would be embedded when we created an application which is deployable. You could, for instance, create an application jar for a Spring Boot application that includes the Embedded Tomcat. A web application can be just used like any other Java program. And the term embedded server denotes that our deployable unit already has a server binaries installed in it. Basically, if I talk about the Tomcat server, it is kind of a standard embedded server with a Spring Boot. When building the Spring Boot project, we include our Spring Boot starter web to our dependency list. So I have shown you earlier when we were creating our first Maven project. So I showed you the pom.xml file in which we had the Spring Boot starter web, which had the set of dependencies, and basically that dependency consisted of the Embedded Tomcat server. I hope so you would have got idea regarding the Embedded Tomcat server which comes up with our Spring Boot application. Now, one of the most interesting part we have to discuss, because every time we created a project, I was telling that the Spring MVC helps you to do a lot of things. I have also told you a certain annotation, the web, where we were adding the annotation, REST controller and request mapping, which came from the package of Spring Web. Basically, server also came from that package, which was Spring Boot Starter. So that package contained some of the most interesting thing, but it was through the help of Spring MVC. Now let's see how does an Spring MVC work. So basically, what is Spring MVC? A Java framework is called Spring MVC, which is basically used to create the web apps. The model view controller design pattern is used in this case. It implements all of the fundamental components of the core Spring framework, including the dependency injection and inversion of control. You can see something like this. So here the model view controller design is there, where you have a web browser communicating with the front controller, which has the model and it communicates with the controller, and here is your model which communicates with the view. The simple MVC based on model view controller concept. With the aid of Dispatcher Servlet, Spring MVC offers a beautiful way for using MVC within the Spring framework. A class called Dispatcher Servlet is used in this instance to map the incoming request to the appropriate controllers, models and views. If I talk about model, you would be thinking what a model is. A model is something which houses the application's data. A data set might consist of a single object or a group of objects. If I talk about controller, a controller houses an application's business logic. The class is designated as a controller for instance using the controller annotation. If I talk about a view displays the information given in a specific format, typically a view page which is made of using JSP plus JSTL. Aside from TimeLeaf, FreeMarker and Apache Velocity, Spring also supports various view technologies. Now, if I talk about the front controller, the dispatcher servlet class serves as a front controller in the Spring Web MVC. It is in charge of controlling the dispatcher servlet, which serves as the front controller and intercepts each incoming request. Then, as you can see, the request is forwarded to the controller by the dispatcher servlet after receiving an entry from the handler mapping from the XML file. Then, the controller gives back a model view object. And finally, the specified view component is called when the dispatcher servlet has checked the entry for the view resolver in the XML file. I hope so you would have got idea regarding how does a Spring MVC works. Then we got to learn about the Spring MVC and the pom.xml file, basically the bill of materials and dependency management. So I am gonna add a topic controller. When the request comes to the /topics, so the topic controller is gonna return the bunch of topics. The request is gonna be a GET request, and in response we are gonna get the JSON objects. Basically, we will be having array of topics here. So without further ado, let's create a new package and add the class. Let's name the package which has demo.topic, which I have already done all over here. So I will guide you what we have done. So go all over here at src/main/java. Okay, just click on the new. Okay, then there will be a class. Just click on the class. Okay. Now here what you can do, you can just name your package as com.example.demo.topic, which I have already created all over here for you, and in that just name the class as topic controller. So just write topic/controller. Okay. Now after adding this, just click finish. Since I have already created this package for you, which is all over here, so I'm just gonna click the cancel. Okay. So after clicking finish, you are gonna see something like this, in which you will be having just package.com example.demo.topic will be the package, and here will be your class. Just only the class will be there. Then rest, what I have done all over here, that I have made this class as a REST controller. So for making the class as a REST controller, you need to add the annotation REST controller. Okay. Now I have added a method all over here. Okay, which is the method name called public string access topics. And this is actually returning a string, which is these are the topics in the course. And I have mapped it with /topics. Now, as you can see all over here, this is just a demo which I have created to check that this controller is working or not. And after making the annotation, you have to just click on it so that you can import these packages. For request mapping, this is this. Okay. And for REST controller, you have to just click on all over here. I hope so it is clear with you, because this is what we have done in the previous video. Now let me show you, is it running fine or not. So let's check this whether our controller is working or not. So just click all over here, localhost 8080, and I'm gonna add our topics all over here /topics. Now I hope so the result will be actually what we have intended. So you can see all over here, it's returning the string, these are the topics in the course. I hope so this is clear. Till here we are gonna do adding some more things and more functionality. So we are gonna see an API which with the JSON objects we are gonna get. Now let's proceed further. So as you can see, this actually works completely fine. So we already know the steps to make a controller. So we have added the REST controller all over here, and here is just a simple method which is actually returning a string, and I'm mapping it with /topics. So for now, this is just returning the topics, which is basically the string. Now I'm gonna do hard code basically the bunch of topics and return it. But in the future, we are gonna take this from the database. So for now, let's hardcode the bunch of topics and return it as a list. In order to hardcode it, I need another topic class, which will have the ID, description, name, and it will return the JSON object. This is actually how it will work. So let's create a class, and since our class will be having some member variables, let's create few of them. So you can just do right click at this package, which is com.example.demo.topic, right click all over here, and you're gonna see new, select the class. Okay, so I will name our class as topic. Okay, now just click the finish. Okay, you can see our class is created, just it is an empty class with nothing else there. Now we are gonna create some member variables, such as we're gonna name it as private. Okay, so what parameters we can have? So let me name it as a type called string. Okay, and such as it's gonna have ID, what is the name of the course, and the last parameter we can name it as info. What is the course info? So I'm just gonna write course info. Okay, just click it all over here. Now this is set. Now what's the next thing I'm gonna do it? I'm gonna create the getters and setters for the same. So for creating the getters and setters, you don't have to write or hard code it. Just right click all over here and you will see a source and it says generate getters and setters. Just click on this. Okay, and click select all. Okay, now let's click on generate and you can see automatically our getters and setters have been created. Now I'm gonna create the constructors. In the same way, you don't have to hard code it. Just right click all over here and click on the source. Okay, now generate constructors using the fields. Just click on this and click on generate. So our constructor would have been created. Now I'm gonna have a no arg constructors so that it is kind of easy to initialize. What basically I'm gonna do is return a list of topics. So what you can do all over here, just you can copy this, okay, and paste it all over here and just delete this, okay, because I want no arguments, and just delete this. So this is basically our no arg constructor all over here. So it will be very easy for things to initialize and I am not making things complex all over here. Now I want to change something. As you can see in our method controller.java, if you see, our method is actually returning a string. And I don't want this. Actually, I want to return a list, not a string. So in order to make our controller to return a list of things, I'm going to change something all over here. So now let's change our method. So we are going to basically return a list. So for doing the same, just type list, okay, and name your class. So our class is topic all over here. So I'm going to write topic, okay. Then what I'm going to do basically, since this is all done, now I'm just going to delete this. And as you can see, I want to import this list because I have not imported yet. And I want to return something like, because in our topic, you can see we have an array of things. Like we have a string name ID, name, course info. So in our controller, when we are returning, I want this method to return these, the first thing what I want to do, I want this method to return a list. Now, since we have an array, so first I have to convert our arrays into list. So for the same, we have to do something like this. So basically what I'm going to do all over here, I'm going to type return arrays dot as list. Just click it all over here. So you can see it is returning arrays as list. So our array of topic is gonna get converted to list by this. Now just delete this and let's add the topic object. So as you can see all over here, I am returning arrays as list. Now I have created our topic object. Let's add these parameters such as ID. Suppose I want to name our ID as 1. Okay. Then I'm gonna add something like, say, first topic is Spring Boot. Okay. This seems fine. Then next, what you can do all over here, finally, you can add something like an introduction to Spring. Okay. Now since this is wrong because we are returning basically string, so I have to add some string all over here. So you can say the topic name should be ID, let's say as Spring. Okay. Now this is completely fine. Now let's add one more topic object. Just type new topic and I want to name it as, suppose we are trying to learn React.js. So the topic name can be React. Okay. React.js, and you can do something like all over here, an introduction to React. Okay. This seems completely fine. Now let's add one more topic object. And in this, I want to name it as, you can say something like, let's learn blockchain. So you can add something like blockchain will be our ID. Okay. And next, what you can add all over here, solidity, we can name it as solidity. Okay. And you can say an introduction to smart contracts. Now we are all set to go. We have added all our parameters. So the first object we have created is of topic, which has the following parameters with ID name Spring and the name as Spring Boot, and the course info is an introduction to Spring Framework. Next, I've added a topic in which I have named it as React, then React.js and introduction to React. And the third one is blockchain, then its name is Solidity and introduction to smart contracts. Okay, now we are all set to go. So after doing all this, just add Ctrl plus S. Okay, you can do it, or you can go all over here at File and click on Save. Since I have already saved, so it's not showing, but for you, when you are doing it, do not forget to save it. Now let's run our program. So as you can see, our Tomcat server has started on the port 8080. Now I'm gonna go all over here and I'm just gonna refresh it. So as you can see, we have successfully created our first API, which is returning the JSON objects. So as you can see, we have created the third object of our topic class, which is ID, name and course info. All these parameters are present. So let me explain you what is going underneath. Basically, what is happening all over here is that, so what we are doing here is basically we are returning a list, not a string. So our controller is returning a list of topics as you have seen earlier. So when the request goes to /topics, the Spring MVC is gonna map to the map method, which is the public list access topics. And this is gonna return the list of topics, and for this we have created our topic class all over here. The REST controller is gonna tell the Spring that this is the controller class, which is already you can see all over here, and it has a request mapping to /topics. And it has a method which is returning the list of topics. So when the request comes up, it will be the HTTP request, and our controller will map its request to the given method. And it will return the required HTTP response, which in our case is a JSON object. So that was all for today's session. I hope so you would have enjoyed today's session.
Just a quick info guys. Intellipaat provides Java certification online training, mentored by industry experts. The course link of which is given in the description below.